Tonight's episode of Legacy Battle is brought to you by Atlas Benefits.
Atlas Benefits has solutions for your insurance needs. Atlas Benefits can help you obtain Medicare, health, or life insurance, and employee benefits. You can find them on the web at www.atlasbenefits.com.
Or you can contact Rob Ducey or Roy Smith at 727-600-2892 and mention Legacy Battle Podcast. Atlas Benefits has all the solutions for your insurance needs. Enjoy the show. This is Legacy Battle. Make sure you hit subscribe on whatever you're listening to, YouTube, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Safari, Spotify, whatever else I'm forgetting. Just hit that subscribe button. I am Michael Adams, creator of Legacy Battle. My panelists tonight from the Gridiron Battle Zones, Brian King, Penn State Collegiate All-Star, Kevin Adams. Our special guest tonight, we're joined by an actor, director, producer. He's multiple hats in his bag here. He starred in TV and film to include Army Wives, Arachnophobia. Gosh, I'm going to have a spider question later for him. Paparazzi and Caddyshack 2, where he played the rich boy villain in that one. Got the picture behind me right there. He's guested on every big show you can think of out there. He's nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor for Billionaire Boys Club. So we are honored to be joined here by actor Brian McNamara. Brian, thank you for coming aboard.
Fellas, thanks for having me.
This is going to be a fun time. I love doing these movies. It gives us a little break from the athletes. So we're going to enjoy this tonight. Tonight's debate is the greatest golf film in the comedy genre. And after, as always, we'll have our Q&A. And we're going to make this a little easier tonight. We're going to be referring to Brian King as BK to avoid any confusion. So tonight's first film we're starting with is going to be Happy Gilmore.
Gilmore, I still crack up every time I watch this movie. Released in '96, I was only 11 years old when this movie came out. Directed by Dennis Dugan and produced by Robert Simmons. One of the screenplay writers was actually Adam Sandler himself and his partner Tim Herlihy. This was their second film working together. Film was released in theaters February of '96 by Universal Pictures. Happy Gilmore was a success. It earned between 39 and 41 million. The budget was only 12 million. And I would say this is probably Sandler's second biggest movie at the time, after Billy Madison, when this came out. So it stars Adam Sandler as Happy Gilmore, Carl Weathers as Chubbs, Christopher McDonald as Shooter McGavin, Frances Bay as Happy's grandmother, and Julie Bowen as Virginia Bennett, which was the girlfriend of Happy Gilmore in the movie. So he found his talent for golf after having an unsuccessful hockey career. He actually went to a tryout, and the man can't skate, but he has a crazy shot. He didn't make the team. Coach made fun of him. He beat up the coach. He leaves the tryout, goes home. His girlfriend leaves him. Which was one of the funniest scenes is when she's walking out and he's on the speaker trying to convince her not to leave.
Yeah.
Man, that cracks me up every time I watch it. But he finds
the
that
young lady walked into his apartment.
Oh yeah.
The old lady, yeah. The speaker.
So he finds out that his grandmother owes the IRS $270,000 for taxes. So while his grandmother's being moved out of the house, he makes a bet with the movers that he could hit a ball further than one of the movers. He cranks one down the road 400 yards, hits a house. The people in the house come out. He hits another one. It hits the guy in the head that was on the porch. Hits a third one. It hits the lady that's hanging out the window, and she falls out the window. So that's how he found out that he had some talent. He went to the local driving range, to make bets, to make some money to help get his grandmother's house back. That's where he met Chubbs, who was the the club pro at that driving range, and convinced Sandler to join the Waterbury Open to qualify for the tour. So he sinks a hole-in-one during that match on a par 4. Shooter McGavin was the guest pro there, and he wasn't pleased. Happy ended up winning that and joining the tour. So Happy gradually gets better, placing higher and higher, making more money. Shooter McGavin starts getting worried, so he hires a heckler to come to the Pro-Am when Sandler was teamed up with Bob Barker. The heckler got under Happy's skin, so instead of taking it out on the heckler, Adam actually takes it out on Bob Barker, and that's where you have the famous scene behind me where Barker and Sandler start duking it out. So he gets suspended, just short of making the amount of money that he needs to make to get his grandmother's house. So he shoots a Subway commercial, which puts him over the amount that he needs. Well, the bank put the house up for auction. Of course, Shooter McGavin was there and actually buys the house. And he makes a deal with Adam, with Happy Gilmore. Basically, the deal ends up being that Happy will leave the tour if he loses, but if he wins, he gets the house. So they go through the tournament. Happy is keeping up with Shooter in the standings. Shooter hires that heckler again, who comes and hits him with a Volkswagen Beetle in the middle of the fairway.
Totally plausible.
Yeah. So he was hoping that Happy would leave the tournament. He didn't. Happy ends up, coming back. Well, first he starts to lose it, and then he ends up coming back. He sinks an unbelievable obstacle putt to win the tournament. There's so many funny parts in this movie. Pretty much laughing throughout the beginning with the tryout, and then like we said, when his girlfriend's leaving him, the scene where he qualifies for the tour, his antics on the course throughout the whole movie, the mini golf scene when Chubbs takes him to the mini golf course. That's funny as well. Ben Stiller's in this movie at the nursing home that his grandmother ends up going to.
Every scene with Ben Stiller in that movie is hilarious.
It's hilarious. And they actually did it. He brought Ben Stiller back for that scene in his Halloween movie that
QB
came out.
Halloween,
Yeah. So Bleacher Report listed this, one of their authors, as the second best golf movie out of all golf movies. So not even just comedy. And then IMDb listed it as number 3 best comedy, only behind Caddyshack out of the 4 that we're talking about tonight. So this movie is definitely hilarious from start to finish.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
So, Brian, before you give it your thoughts on the movie, I got to ask you, have you tried the Happy Gilmore swing?
I have tried it and failed miserably. But one of our buddies that, we play golf with, our foursome, he usually finishes the 18th hole with the Happy Gilmore, and more often than not crushes it.
Nice.
And if you look at that movie, I literally just finished it about a half an hour ago. That was the last one I was researching. But every time he hits it, it doesn't look CGI to me. He hits it, right?
Yeah. And that's what, 92. So it's probably not CGI.
96.
Yeah, they can do stuff with how far it goes and all that with the editing, but every time he hits it pretty darn square.
It's an amazing feat. That the scene with Bob Barker, obviously hilarious. You said you just checked it out. What were your thoughts on it as a whole? It's just nonstop slapstick comedy all the way through.
Well, I also looked up on IMDb just some fun facts about it and stuff. And one of the things they pointed out was that Dennis Dugan, who's also in the movie, did you guys know that? He's
Commissioner. Yeah.
Commissioner, that's right.
Yeah.
But he went to Bob Barker and said, we got a stunt double for you, so it's not going to be a problem. And Bob Barker was like, no, I'm doing it. Which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Another note on that is Bob Barker, he actually rejected the script when it was first given to him and wasn't going to do it. And then they changed it where he won the fight and then he wanted to do it.
That sounds about right.
What, isn't Bob Barker like a black belt or something? I'm sure sworn I read that somewhere that he's like actually he can fight in real life.
Wow.
I read that somewhere.
He looked good fighting,
Yeah. Well, Brian, Adam Sandler's comedies, like today, when people today try and watch them, they don't like them. But during the 90s and the early 2000s, every movie he put out was making $100 million. I mean, just what are your thoughts on Adam Sandler's comedies?
Well, specifically this movie, you know, you put your brain on a vacation. Just let it go to Cabo, because it you know, there's like the car driving on the fairway and the alligator with the one eye. You know,
the one eye, yeah.
Just silly, completely silly. And that's what I think is really fun about it. And he takes every gag as far as it can go. Like, you know, as you were saying, Kevin, the speaker, you know, honey, come on back. We'll kissy, kissy, smoochy, smoochy. You know, and then there's a kid, they cut to a kid listening. And then they cut to a few more people listening. And then the Asian lady shows up in the apartment. You know, they take every joke as far as it can go. And that's what I love about it.
There's a joke all the way. Every second of that movie is a joke. Even the very last scene where Chubbs is in heaven above the house and Abraham Lincoln's
Lincoln and the alligator. The alligator's with them.
What's Lincoln doing?
Where's all this aim coming from? Yeah, I know.
And then the shameless Subway plug throughout the entire movie. You know, the product placement there.
Yeah. Well, we can laugh at that one all night. Let's move on to our second film here tonight, and that's going to be The Caddy, and I'm representing that one. So we're going back to 1953. I feel like when I get these shows, I end up with like movies from 60 years ago all the time. So 1953, starring just the legend comedy duo of Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. I think they did well over 15 films together. Up to that point, this was their most expensive one. Cost quite a bit, $1.8 million. So for 1983, that's a pretty penny. Now it brought in $3.5 million in the U.S. alone. But if people remember Jerry Lewis, he was absolutely huge in France, and they sold over 1 million tickets in France. Wow. So yeah, this was considered a very successful box office run for it. And it also brought us for the first time the song That's Amore by Dean Martin, Oscar nomination for Best Song, classic song. I'm sure it was probably #1 on the charts back then. That was the one thing I didn't look up, but I love that song. I used to have Dean Martin's Greatest Hits, and I used to have the Rat Pack on a poster in my college dorm. So just a huge Dean Martin fan I am. The guy is a star. Everything that he does in this movie just shows how great he is, between his singing, his acting, his comedic timing. I'm sure working with Jerry Lewis was not easy, just because the craziness that comes with it, but he did a fantastic job. But it also stars the beautiful Donna Reed, and I had seen Donna Reed in This Is Your Life, or whatever that is.
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. And gosh, man, I mean, she was pretty in that, but in this movie, she was absolutely a knockout, a stunner.
Now, you guys are all too young for this, but she was also had the Donna Reed show, which I grew up on. And she was the epitome of the housewife, the beautiful mom, and, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And now we got cameos from golf legends to include Sam Snead, Ben Hogan. I'm wearing Ben Hogan's shirt right now. So he's got an 83% on Rotten Tomatoes. So basically, this movie, you got Dean. He plays Joe Anthony. It's a guy who can't keep a job, really. And his sister is engaged to Harvey Miller, played by Jerry Lewis, who also can't keep a job. But he loses his in much more ridiculous ways. But Harvey's dad was a great golfer, and he wanted Harvey to be a golfer, but Harvey was scared to death to hit a ball in front of people and really do anything in front of large groups of people. So Joe's parents, they own an Italian restaurant, and that's going to like close, and they need a bunch of money or whatever. So it turns out that Harvey becomes Joe's not just caddy, but coach as well, tries to teach him how to play. So they go to the first tournament. Joe wins $500, which ironically, that was what they needed. But unfortunately, he had to give that money back to the club because every prior winner of that tournament had donated the money back to the club, and he didn't want to look bad. And he also had Donna Reed there giving Goo eyes who was watching. So I'm sure that played into it too. And then Joe ends up getting arrested in basically a mistaken identity, I guess we could call it, theft. And he has to be rushed by the police to make this big final tournament for the winner gets $40,000. You got to look at that in 1953 money. That's a good chunk of change. So once he gets there, he's disqualified because of too many disruptions from his caddy, Harvey, Jerry Lewis, and his girlfriend, Kathy. They knew he was going to be late if he wasn't there in time to tee off. So they're like stealing Ben Hogan's ball and all kind of crazy stuff. And then his family shows up with all their cars, are pulled right onto the golf course and turns into a giant melee and a fight ensues. And of course, Joe and Anthony, like everything that they did together was funny. And there was this rich guy who owned like a club, and he offered them a job as, doing comedy together. So they end up doing that. This movie has a really cool ending where the two of them, they finish their gig, their comedy gig, and they go to meet up with their wives in the back, and their wives are standing there talking to this like new comic duo who looks just like Harvey and Joe. And it turns out the name of the duo is Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. So their wives, freaky, yeah. So their wives are actually kissing them and everything. And it was just a really neat ending to see that. Split screens, back in 1953, a little differently than what you would see them today, but a pretty cool ending. I really enjoyed the film. So I gotta be honest, like I hadn't seen it. I saw it once a long time ago. I had to rewatch it just to refresh myself, and I absolutely loved watching it. I mean, Jerry Lewis's comedy probably doesn't stand up today. I don't know how people would appreciate it today, but I thought the movie was really good. So, Brian, I mean, your thoughts on the film? These guys are comic legends. So what do you think about it?
Well, first of all, Michael, I got to tell you, I'm a little distracted by that really handsome guy over your shoulder. Am I right, Kevin? BK? I mean, that's just, I'm like drooling. And no, I watched it Monday night. I had a buddy over for dinner, and we watched it together. And it was a lot of fun, but there were a lot of strange things about that movie. This is from, a guy who's in the movie world. There was no music in that movie. I mean, other than the songs that he sang, there was no soundtrack, which
wow.
Halfway through the movie, I was like, wow, that's kind of weird, especially for a movie back in the 50s. And, but Dean's swing and even Jerry Lewis's swing are really beautiful golf swings. But then seeing Ben Hogan swing a golf club was like, okay, there it is. There's perfection. But no, it was a lot of fun. And Jerry Lewis, the other thing we noticed was, if you look closely at a lot of Jerry Lewis's comedy in that movie, you can see where Jim Carrey got a lot of his stuff. There's a direct influence there from the facial expressions and stuff, and the physical comedy when he's working at the department store with the skates and swinging around and stuff. He's pretty incredible at physical comedy, or was pretty incredible at physical comedy,
Right.
But no, that was a good movie. I was also trying to figure out what golf course that was. Because probably Los Angeles, I'm guessing they shot. And I was thinking Riviera, but I couldn't pinpoint that.
Kevin, you know the courses better than I do. Any idea?
No, I have no idea.
Yeah, they didn't show anything that really told you where it was.
I did not pick up on the no background music. That I didn't even notice that. There was a lot of singing.
Unnoticed until all of a sudden, I forget which one of us pointed it out, but we were like, holy crap, there's no music in here. But Dino singing, I mean, and that's the other thing too. I think that's why their comedy works so well, is he's like smooth as silk and Jerry is abrasive as sandpaper, It's like two complete opposites.
It kind of made me want to go check out some more of their movies together. I mean, I've seen like a lot of their movies not together, so that's something I'm going to have to look into here in the future. Kevin, let me ask you real quick, because we were discussing this movie a little bit before we got on here tonight. You said that your wife had the same problem that my wife had. Like 2 minutes of hearing Jerry Lewis talk, they were done. So, what were your thoughts on that comedy? Like, do you feel it would hold up today, or what would people today think about watching something like that, in your opinion?
So I hadn't seen the movie until today, to be honest with you. And I'm just not into that type of comedy. I mean, for its time, I'm sure back in '53 it was top notch. I mean, everyone loved Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, the Rat Pack, and whatnot. But it was kind of cheesy and corny, and I don't know. I mean, nowadays, I mean, I grew up with a lot different type of movies and comedy, and I don't think millennials would sit down and watch this movie. But I mean, I did like the golf scene on the last final tournament when he was trying to win the $10,000 at that tournament. I thought that was one of the better parts of the movie, and the department store when he grabbed the rope and he had the skates on and he shot his boss in the forehead with the dart gun, and I mean, there were some.
Gilmore shoots the guy with the nail gun. So
the nail gun, yeah, when he is the construction worker.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I don't see it standing up today. But back in its time, it definitely was, a top movie. And that type of comedy back then was big, and people laughed at it and whatnot. But I just don't see it making it in today's world, unfortunately.
The world could use a little more corny nowadays. And that movie was clean. You could watch it with your whole family.
Yeah.
I could have my daughter. That's the only movie tonight we're talking about that you could sit down with like your 6-year-old child or 5-year-old child and watch. So,
and to answer your question about Amore and the charts, it peaked at number 2.
Number 2. Okay.
Yep.
Hey, that's still pretty good. So, all right, let's move on to our next film. That's going to be Caddyshack.
All right, Caddyshack. So Caddyshack came out in 1880, and the cast for this film was pretty much a comedy all-star team of its time. You had Ted Knight as Judge Smales. You had Chevy Chase as Ty Webb, Rodney Dangerfield as Al Zervik. You had Bill Murray as the insane groundskeeper, Carl Spackler. And then you had a newcomer on the scene who became a legend, the Gopher. So this movie opens with Kenny Loggins' hit song, I'm All Right, playing. We see the Gopher who's digging holes and just tearing up this beautiful golf course known as Bushwood. So Judge Smales, he sees the destruction, and he orders the groundskeeper to eliminate the problem. And an intense rivalry between the Gopher and Carl Spackler, as you see behind me, was born. So meanwhile, you have Danny Noonan, played by Michael O'Keefe, a teenage caddy who is hoping to gain favor with Judge Smales and receive the annual caddy scholarship. You have developer Al Zervik, played by Dangerfield, who, let's just say, isn't exactly country club material, and despite being filthy rich, and he gets completely under Judge Smales' skin, and just, I mean, everything this guy does just makes Smales just irate. And then you have Ty Webb, who's played by Chevy Chase. He's the son of the country club's founder, and he's a great golfer, and he's like a lot of like a philosopher. He's got a lot of wisecracks and stuff during the flick. And so then you've got Danny Noonan. He appears to be winning Judge Smales' favor. And then disaster strikes for him twofold, because you have Serzik's larger boat, runs into Judge Smales' boat and completely demolishes it. And Danny Noonan's at this party, but Judge Smales quickly finds out that Noonan had snuck away, and he was sort of dropping the anchor, so to speak, with Judge Smales' niece. And so Judge Smales decides that he wants to keep this quiet, so he's going to give Danny another chance at the scholarship. So then things come to a boiling point between Smales and Zervik, and they agree to a doubles match, which the winner would get $40,000, So you had Dr. Beeper and Smales versus Webb and Zervik. So while all of this is going on, the Gopher and Carl are just battling. First, Carl, he tries to grab the Gopher. He puts his hand in the hole, and the Gopher bites his hand. Then Carl, he tries to flood the Gopher out with thousands of gallons of water from the hose. Then Carl just straight up tries to shoot him with a rifle. None of this stuff works. So finally, while Carl is sort of insanely explaining how he's going to get, on the varmints level, Carl fashions several pieces of plastic explosives that resemble rodents, like bunnies and chipmunks and stuff, that he's going to try to outsmart the Gopher with. But meanwhile, the Gopher is kind of watching through the window and he sees what's going on. So back to this all-important golf match. Webb, he makes the mistake of smoking a huge doobie with Carl the previous night, so his game is all out of whack. Zervik, he's playing poorly, so he ends up taking a shot that ricochets and comes back and hits his arm. So he tries to claim injury so that this match will end up being a draw. But instead they rule that Danny Noonan can come in and replace Zervik. So Danny comes in and he plays well, and he ends up going for the winning putt, and he puts the putt right at the edge of the hole. So right at the same time, Carl, he detonates his plastic explosives and pretty much just blows up the whole damn golf course, and ends up vibrating the ball into the hole for the win. So, everybody on Zervik and Danny's side is all happy. And so the last thing you see is the Gopher comes out of his hole, he coughs a little smoke out of his mouth, and he just starts boogieing the I'm all right again, because the Gopher's still hanging in there. So this movie was just absolutely hilarious from beginning to end. ESPN once called it the funniest sports movie ever. I mean, any sport. And, I really totally agree with that take. I think it was just a hilarious movie all the way around.
All-star cast for sure. Brian, your thoughts on the film? I know you're a little familiar with the Gopher from your time on Caddyshack 2. But
the Gopher made a much better deal the second time, got a lot more money.
Got a lot more. Well, what are your thoughts on the film? And I mean, I don't know, like, what today people would think of some of the jokes in that. Like, I don't think they'd be said in some movies today. But, what are your thoughts on Caddyshack?
Well, I tell you, I got a lot of them. Because when I got asked to do Caddyshack 2, you're hoping to do a sequel to one of the great, as you say, comedy movies, comedy sports movies, comedy golf movies of all time. And at that time, little inside baseball, Rodney Dangerfield was just kept negotiating himself out of the movie. He just kept asking for more. Every time they gave him something, he said, no. And then we got Jackie Mason, who, God rest his soul, he just passed a few weeks ago, did okay, but he never acted before. So he was really out of his league and stuff. But back to Caddyshack. One of the stories I heard on it from someone who shall not be named, but was in the first movie, was that, during the 80s, there were some drugs going around. And they got back from Florida to LA and started editing this movie. It was Harold Ramis, wasn't it, who directed it?
Yes. And
they sat there and they were like, we have no movie. We have no story. There's nothing. And he and Bill Murray went back to Fort Lauderdale and did all of this stuff after the fact and kind of wove it into the story to bring the whole story together and stuff, which I thought was really interesting. But I think a lot of the gags hold up. I mean, the candy bar in the pool.
Yeah,
that was funny.
Classic gag with the Jaws music playing,
And you're right on about the drugs. I've seen the True Hollywood Story about this show, and Harold Ramis wasn't afraid to talk about some of the drug use that was going on at Thorne.
Yeah, it made a lot of those guys sober after the fact.
And I know, like, too, they talked about the heat. Like, it was like 110 degrees when they're filming that movie. So I'm sure it was not an easy time out there on that course all the time. Brian, I'm sorry, BK. Like, I understand you're representing this movie. I mean, what are your thoughts as far as it holding up today?
I mean, I think I echo what you said. I mean, there's a few of the jokes that, I don't think maybe the feminist types would like too much, stuff like that. So there's some stuff that was okay in 1980 that's not really viewed as okay now. But as far as like, if you can get sort of set that aside and just, like Brian said earlier, just sort of turn your brain off and then, enjoy the ride. I think it holds up, on a comedic level, with any of these movies easily, and so it just I guess it kind of depends on, your approach as you go into the movie.
Well, we'll see if it wins our vote tonight. Let's move on to our final film tonight. That's going to be Tin Cup. BK and I are going to be splitting this one up here a little bit, but so this movie was made in 1996 on a budget of $45 million, brought in $75.8 million. So not exactly a huge success. I mean, I don't think when you add in all the extra money it costs to advertise and all that, probably didn't bring in too much of a profit. But stars Kevin Costner, who was nominated for the Golden Globe for this movie for Best Actor in a Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy. This also reunited Costner with Ron Shelton, who had done Bull Durham with him. So they had that connection already going. That was, Gold and Bull Durham. So they were really trying to remake that Gold together. And then it also stars Don Johnson and Rene Russo. And of course, Cheech and Chong's own Cheech Marin. Got to give him a shout out. Just a hilarious guy. It still holds 72% on Rotten Tomatoes. So that's not too bad, 72%. BK is going to give us a little synopsis here of the film, and then we'll ask Brian McNamara his thoughts on the movie.
So this movie starts off a set like in West Texas, and Kevin Costner, he's a driving range owner, and he's he's a really, really good golfer who never really, I guess, applied himself. It's thought that he probably could have made the big time. And Cheech Marin is his caddy, and Cheech really, really believes in him and feels like, he could be a champion golfer if he would just apply himself. But he had a reputation of really self-destructing in big moments, and that's going to come up later in this movie. But that's sort of always been his mantra, his history is that, he's a guy that just couldn't really finish. So what ends up happening is Rene Russo shows up, and she wants to get golf lessons from Kevin Costner. And so, there's some funny parts there where she's sort of adjusting to the game, and there's a lot of philosophy that Kevin Costner sort of spills out. And as things progress, Kevin Costner's really getting the hots for her, but then he discovers that she is the girlfriend of a golfer who he had a great rivalry with back when they were younger, Don Johnson. And Don Johnson in this movie, he's pretty much a jerk. He's a real snobbish type of guy. I'm better than you and everything. And he really, really talks down to Kevin Costner throughout this film. So Kevin Costner, eventually, one thing leads to another, and he's really trying to prove himself to Rene Russo, sort of prove himself worthy. And so he decides that he's going to try to go, and he's going to, his goal is to win the U.S. Open. He's going to sort of stick it to Dawn Johnson, who's a golf pro, and he's going to sort of win her over. So he starts going through the qualifying, going through everything, and he's really, really doing well. But the one thing that's sort of holding him back is he plays really, really aggressively. And this is like a big battle between him and his caddy, Cheech Marin, that he just, he wants to go for these long shots that, have like a water hazard or a sand pit or something like that, rather than just sort of playing it safe. And then meanwhile, every time he screws up, Don Johnson is there to sort of lecture him on, you should have played it safe. And so one thing leads to another. He ends up qualifying for the Open. He gets into the Open. Is the first day he shoots an 83, which was like one of the worst scores ever. And, it's looking like he's just going to have to, bail out and leave. But, you know, he gets a lot of support from his little support group there, comes back, sort of throws caution to the wind. And the next day he sets a course record. I believe it's a 62, if I'm not mistaken. And he gets, and so he's like right back in the thick of things. So day 3 goes, the important thing to remember is on hole 18, every time he tries to, on his second shot, he tries to hit it over the water hazard onto the green. And every time he fails, and it ends up costing him each time. So now you get to the final day. He's neck and neck with Don Johnson.
Is par 5, right?
That's correct.
On par 5.
Right. And so he gets to the final day. He's neck and neck with Don Johnson now. You know, he's got a chance to win. It was like, you know, basically a no name showing up, has a chance to win the U.S. Open. I mean, it's huge news. You see, there's Jim Nantz, you know, from the world of sports, great announcer. He's announcing the events and everything, and everybody's shocked. So then you finally get into this final hole, and Kevin Costner ends up trying to do the same thing. He's trying to use his wood, 4 wood, or was it 3 wood, right? And he tries to get it over the water hazard, ends up putting it in the drink again, and he ends up just over and over, sort of gets insane, trying to do this, trying to put this shot in over and over and over again, ends up shooting a 12 on the final hole. But what he does do is he does finally get it onto the green, which is something no one else was able to do. And everybody sort of shifts and doesn't really even notice that Don Johnson was the winner. They sort of just make, you know, this legendary sort of scene that he puts on ends up being the thing that's, you know, people remember forever. He wins Rene Russo's heart. They're all together now. And, you know, now he's qualified for the next season as well. And he's sort of like a, you know, bona fide up and coming star now. So the whole thing sort of, you know, it's like, in a way, Kevin Costner's a little bit like how he was in Bull Durham, where he's a guy who, like, you know, he had a lot of things that passed him by. He could have been this great superstar. A lot of things sort of, you know, self-inflicted wounds or whatever. It's the same sort of character in this, but, you know, but in the world of golf. And I thought that there was a lot of really good golf in this, probably better golf than any of the other movies we're talking about tonight.
The one thing BK forgot to mention about that too is Rene Russo was actually his shrink.
That's right. Shrink, right.
You throw that in there too. So, Brian, something Rene Russo said on that 18th hole on the last day, I really loved, and I think it's so true in sports. She had said, nobody remembers who won the U.S. Open 5 years ago, but they're going to remember this shot. And like, when I think about that, like in real sports, I was thinking to myself, what's something that was famous in sports? And what came up to me was, in the 80s, Crash McRae, who was an outfielder, ran through the outfield wall. You see it on all the bloopers and made the catch.
Made the catch, that's right.
Yeah, but if no one would be able to tell me who won the World Series that year, you know, but they're going to remember that catch, you know, so he's famous for life, you know.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on something like that? I mean, does that seem accurate to you too? And tell us about the movie and the acting performance. Costner's always
well, a couple things. And first of all, BK is spot on. Easily the best golf of any of these movies. I mean, again, I was talking about Dean Martin's swing, Kevin Costner's golf swing, you know, and Don Johnson. If you look closely, they don't show him a lot. He doesn't have that great golf swing. I mean, it's okay, but you can tell it's not a full-on pro. Whereas Kevin Costner could be a pro, you know, with his golf swing. And that was the other thing I found really interesting about the movie was while it was a comedy, it was about the mental game. And the mental game of golf, for instance, there's a book that I love. I read it probably 20 years ago. And let me preface this all by saying I suck at golf. I really enjoy playing it, but I suck at golf. But is a book called The New Golf Mind. And it basically splits your brain into 2 halves, which it does anyway, the creative half and the analytical half. So that when you're setting up for a shot, you use this, I think, the right half of your brain, and you figure out the wind and the distance and the elevation and all this kind of stuff. And then when you step up and address the ball, you turn that brain off and you turn on your left brain and you use your imagination and you imagine a great golf swing. And that's kind of what I thought was fun about this movie, you know, was it delved into that, you know, all the demons that Kevin Costner had as a golfer, which, like you said, he also has in Bull Durham, you know, that he had to overcome. But it was a lot of fun. One of the negatives for me was that group of buddies of his. They were just there for a gag. Like there was none of them had any kind of real life to it or a real friendship or anything. They were just peeking through the window at Rene Russo and, you know, sleeping on the floor in the Winnebago. It just didn't have. But there was a Waffle House in the movie, so it had that going for it, which is nice.
I think Cheech though. I think Cheech was really his friend. You know.
Oh, absolutely. And I was going to say too. What struck me is that Cheech is a really solid actor.
Yeah.
Really good. He had some serious stuff going on there. When, you know, as you were talking about, when he gets pissed off at Kevin Costner for being too aggressive and not listening to him, he nails it.
Yeah. Kevin, real quick. Oh, go ahead. All right, you go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just going to mention, you know, I agree that this movie definitely has the best golf. As far as comedy goes, I think it's the least funny out of the four that we're talking about tonight. But the golf-wise, like, this is a great movie. I love this movie. I used to watch it all the time. Costner actually got trained by Gary McCord, who's a commentator and a pro golfer, and was in the movie. And there was a lot of actually pros that made appearances in this. Mickelson, Jansen, Couples, Stadler. So, I mean, it definitely had a lot of a golf aspect to it. But Gary McCord trained Costner extensively on this movie to perfect his swing. And then that event with Costner shooting that shot at the end was actually based on a real event. Gary McCord had a tournament that he was in, and he needed a birdie to win, and he kept going for it over and over and over again, and actually ended up getting a 16 on the hole.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
So I mean, so the movie, I mean, it's great. It's a great movie, but if we're looking at, because we're going for comedy here, unfortunately, I think this is the least funny out of the four.
And you know, the other thing I forgot, because I rewatched it earlier this week, was that in that final round of golf, his first shot on the 18, or his second shot on the 18th hole, I thought it, you know, I remembered what happened in the movie, so I thought it went straight in the water. I forgot that it actually landed on the green
down,
and then rolls off the false front.
Yeah,
I thought it was pretty cool.
Our only dramedy tonight. We'll call it a dramedy because it's dramedy comma. So, all right, let's move into our vote tonight. Can't pick your own, guys. BK, you're in my corner. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, like I said, I thought Tin Cup had the best golf, you know, and then of course, you know, the Caddy is a very great classic golf film. But you know, I can't pick my own. Caddyshack. So, I got to go with Happy Gilmore. I mean, that one just completely. I'm just laughing through the whole entire thing. I mean, that scene behind Kevin there, you know, the whole, you know, Price is Wrong thing, you know, that was just, I just lost it when he said that. So, yeah, I got to go with that one.
Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I already said the Tin Cup is the least funny of the four, and then the Caddy. It just nowadays I just didn't. I mean, it was a good movie, and it was probably really funny back then, but for me, it's just not a winner for me. So I'm gonna have to go with Caddyshack. I love the candy bar scene. I love when Bill Murray hits. He pretends like he's driving. And he takes out those flowers that look like golf balls. He acts like he's playing, like winning the championship or something when he's hitting them. I'm gonna go with Caddyshack.
I bet your grandparents loved the Caddy. They thought it was hilarious. Okay,
probably.
That's all I'm saying. So I'm gonna go next here. So if you would have asked me before this week, I would have said Caddyshack hands down. hands down, because that's the first thing people think when you think of golf movies is Caddyshack. And I remember watching it when I was younger, and I thought it was so great and hilarious. And then when I rewatched it this week, I'm like, I didn't think it was that great, and I was shocked by that. I really was shocked by that. And I mean, yeah, there's definitely some funny scenes. And if I was voting for what is the best golf movie of all time, I'd give it to Caddyshack hands down. However, we're voting tonight for what's the funniest. And to me, the funniest one was Happy Gilmore. Even when we were talking about the movies tonight, we were all cracking up the most talking about Happy Gilmore. Maybe it's the time I grew up in. I don't know. But I'm going to give my vote to Happy Gilmore. Brian, we're on to you.
Oh, boy, this is a lot of pressure. You didn't tell me about the pressure, fellas. I feel like Kevin Costner in Tin Cup. No, I mean, the interesting thing in rewatching these movies and talking with you guys is each of these movies has strong points and weak points. And having watched all of them again, I think Happy Gilmore is strong on the funny, there's almost zero on the plot. Like there's no, it's not, like I said earlier, just check your brain out and go have a good time watching the movie. The Caddy, there was good stuff in it, but there was some strange stuff too. Like that ending actually threw me. And my buddy, we were just like, wait, rewind that. Did he just say Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis? All these things. But, and again, the Tin Cup was a terrific movie, fun to watch, good sports movie, good underdog movie. If we're talking comedy, I'm not going to give it the big plus. So I have to create a tie and say Caddyshack, because to me, it's just got all the elements. And, the line that keeps coming back to me, and especially because I was fortunate enough to get to work with him just a little bit, Chevy Chase is hysterical. And the scene where Bill Murray and Chevy Chase are smoking the doobie, and Bill Murray says, yeah, you got a pool at your place, right? He goes, yeah, I got a pool in a pond. The pond will be good for you. I mean, that's classic Chevy Chase. So I go Caddyshack.
So that's 2 for Happy Gilmore, 2 for Caddyshack tonight. On our show, when we have a tie, when the special guest voted for one in the tie, their vote counts as more. Win for Caddyshack tonight.
Wow. Good. Thank goodness you didn't tell me that to begin with. Even more pressure.
It happened with Megan Cavanaugh in A League of Their Own. She voted for it to make a tie, so it got the win as well. But
I lost that one because of the guest vote too.
Well, let's move into our Q&A. BK, you got the wins. You got first question.
All right. So my question for you is, because of the popularity of Caddyshack was just so large, was there a sense of pressure during the filming of Caddyshack 2 to kind of try to live up to the, sort of lofty expectations?
Yeah, it's interesting. I wouldn't say it was oppressive pressure, but we all felt it. We all, and again, it started right from the beginning with the casting and stuff like that. Not having Rodney Dangerfield in it, you were like, okay, all right, well, we're still going to give it our best shot. And, but we did have Chevy Chase in it and Dan Aykroyd and stuff, and Randy Quaid. Some great people, and the young crowd that you have pictured behind you, Jessica Lundy and Jonathan Silverman and China Phillips. It was a good group, but we definitely felt the responsibility to try and I'll be honest, I didn't think it worked out great, but Michael, notwithstanding your comment about really loving that movie, which I very much appreciate. When I go into a pro shop, that's what I'm recognized for. I've been doing this for 40-something years, and when I go to a golf pro shop, I'm recognized for Caddyshack too, and that makes me proud, so.
Kevin.
So I want to take you to 1995. to something that I love it. It's one of the funniest episodes of Seinfeld. You start in the wink. George gets squirted in the eye by grapefruit, and that causes Kramer to sell George Steinbrenner's birthday card, and a kid in the hospital gets it, and
yeah,
tries to get it back. What was it like filming that episode and working with the cast of Seinfeld and doing that episode?
What's interesting about that was just on. I was actually back visiting my dad in New York a couple weeks ago, and that happened to be on a rerun. So it's always kind of fun. My dad actually today is his birthday, his 93rd birthday.
Nice.
So it's always fun for him to kind of see me on. I mean, he knows I've been doing this a long time, but still, it's fun for him to see me on TV. And especially with that 80s big hair. But it's interesting coming into a show. It depends on when you come into it. Like if I did Seinfeld in season 1 or season 2, when they were still kind of finding their way, that would have been one thing. But this was, I think, season 6 or 7.
Yeah.
They were big. And so you're a little awestruck as a guest star. And the other interesting thing about guest stars is, if you notice, they don't do much. They don't do a lot of comedy. We're the straight man for them to be funny. I was a straight man for Elaine, who Julia is hysterical to be funny. But you're coming into Seinfeld. Like, I was a fan. And so it was like, holy crap. And they were all really nice, except for Michael Richards, who ultimately was nice, but I found out he had never said hello to me. And I was like, okay, I guess that's how you roll, whatever. It turns out he is painfully shy. And so he just walks around the set and he works out his bits. You can see him doing it like all the time, in his imagination, like what he's going to do in this particular scene. But he's so shy that when we finally did like almost have to say hello, he was like, oh yeah, I'm really sorry. I didn't say hello before. And I was like, okay, so you're not an asshole, if I'm allowed to say that here.
Yeah.
That's fine.
But it was a lot of fun. I love doing sitcoms, for an actor, having a live audience, especially with comedy. For instance, when we did Caddyshack 2, you're filming and you got to be quiet on the set. No noise, So if you do a joke, you don't know if it's funny. You hope it's funny. But with a live audience for a sitcom like Seinfeld, it's fun to have that audience feedback.
So for 117 episodes, you played Michael Holden on Army Wives. I got to ask you about Army Wives. There's a lady I work with that absolutely loved that show. So I just want to know what it was like to be every day on set surrounded by extremely beautiful women, getting to work with them. Catherine Bell, Kim Delaney, just to name a few. I can't tell you how hard I crushed on Kim Delaney when I was in like early college years. So what was it just like working with that cast, all-star cast?
I didn't even notice any of the attractive women, honestly. It was the dream job. It was the dream job. I mean, as you said, we filmed in Charleston, South Carolina, which is my new favorite town in all the world, surrounded by beautiful women. And I got saluted all the time because I was the general, and then, even the final season when Kim had been killed off, they brought in Brooke Shields for me. Poor me. So it was a fantastic job, and it was great writing. And the real icing on the cake was we all were really proud of that show because we told important stories and we felt like we told them well. And, the support we got from the military community, especially Army wives, who, real Army wives are hysterically funny. They drink, they have margarita parties. They let loose a lot because their spouses are deployed, and any day they could get the tragic call, you know. So they're really there for each other, and we told those stories, and we were really proud of it.
BK.
You've performed roles in several types of films and shows, comedies, sci-fi, dramas, military, as you mentioned. Which drama do you feel most comfortable in? And is there a genre that you've never had a role in that you would like to try someday?
If it's a genre, I've never done a Western, which I would love to do, but I'm not sure I could do because I'm really allergic to horses. But I would suffer through it, and I would do as much Benadryl as I had to do a Western. I'm a huge John Wayne fan. I just love John Wayne movies, and I never got to do that stuff. But yeah, you know, in terms of genre, comedy and drama both have a place in my heart. I love comedy. I love making people laugh. And I love making people cry, you know, and feel stuff. And on Army Wives, there was a joke towards the end of the first season, they had put a sign on my dressing room door saying "Crying Brian," because I'm a big Irish emotional mush, and you know, I played a pretty strong general, and there were certain scenes when I'd be, you know, talking about a fallen soldier or something, and I would start to lose it. And they're like, "God, you can't do that, Brian. Come on, get it together." And, you know, the truth is a lot of soldiers that I talked to said that they've seen generals get emotional and they appreciate it because they know they care about their well-being and stuff. And, but I do love making people laugh. So I don't think I have a favorite. And, you know, my favorite still is acting. If you give me the chance to act, I'll do whatever you want. So,
Kevin.
So how did you get into the acting career? Like, did you start young, or was it something later on as you got older?
In college, I actually, when I was graduating high school, the drama teacher who I had never acted for came up to me and said, "You should try acting." And I was like, "Well, why?" He goes, "I don't know. It's just something about you." And for me, I think it originated because I'm the youngest of six, and I just always made my family laugh. I entertained them, and I loved watching movies and stuff. And but yeah, when I did go to college, I sort of looked into acting freshman year, and I was terrified. So I went backstage and studied scene design because I knew I loved being around the theater. And so I just got into that whole world for a couple of years. And then at the end of my junior year, somebody just pushed me into a play, and I walked on stage the first time, and I was like, "Okay, thanks. This is what I do. I appreciate it." It's a hell of a ride. I mean, it's been fantastic sometimes, but sometimes it's a little challenging, you know, because it's not steady work. But
so we'll get you out of here with this. I guess it's a two-parter. So, Arachnophobia, scary movie for sure. Was it real spiders? I want to know that. And then, yeah, what are you working on anything now? You know, that we'll be able to see soon.
First of all, Frances Bay, Adam Sandler's grandma, was in Arachnophobia. So I had met her on that movie. That was probably 2/3 fake spiders. What they did for particularly the scene at the end when we're in the house and there are spiders everywhere.
Yeah.
They stuck these rubber spiders on the wall, and then every so often they put a couple real ones. So you'd see the real ones move and you'd think they were all moving. You know, that was kind of their trick with that. But that was the first movie I got where I didn't audition. I just met the director, Frank Marshall, and we sat down and he said, "Do you, you know, are you afraid of spiders?" And I was like, "Oh, please. No, I'm not afraid of spiders." not really knowing whether or not I didn't like spiders, I could tell you that. But then I got up to Cambria, Northern California, where we were shooting on my very first day. And I'm walking to the set, and there's Entertainment Tonight interviewing Frank Marshall and the spider specialist about these New Zealand brown poisonous spiders. And he goes, "Oh, look, Brian McNamara's here. He plays our spider specialist. So let's put a spider on his arm." And they've got a camera rolling. And I'm like, okay, time to get over any arachnophobia you have right now, because you're going to lose a job if you freak out and squeal like a girl. So I passed that test, which was nice. But it was a great experience. It was fun working with Jeff Daniels and John Goodman. And then right now, as we come out of COVID, it's finally starting to pick up again. So it's been pretty slow for me. I did a Magnum PI earlier in the year, which was fantastic. 2.5 weeks in Hawaii. Where's the bad news? And then I just, the other weird thing about COVID now is we don't go into casting directors' offices anymore. We record things at home. So I literally, in my second bedroom back there, I record auditions and, put them out there and hope I get them. So we'll see what comes up.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, for joining us tonight. Awesome.
A real pleasure, you guys. That was really fun. Good movie choices.
I want to remind everybody, make sure you hit subscribe on whatever you're listening on, and just continue watching, and we'll see you next time. Have a great night.